Sonia Barrett, very glad to have you as a guest on my show. I believe the first time I saw you was at Tolik's conference this past September, or was it October when he had the conference? Well, whatever. It was it was in Sedona. It was in 2018, the fall, early fall, and I decided to have you as a guest on my show. I liked what I heard, I liked what you had to say, and you seem to be very serious and passionate about what you do, judging by from what I see here on your site and your videos. So we only have an hour to go today, which is all right. In some cases, that's a good thing because people have lousy attention spans, and I always make us think about that on my show. But
Mm-hmm.
anyhow, with that being said, I guess I'd like to ask you to try to make this short, sweet, and to the point, though, because we only got an hour, and I try to get information out, but it wouldn't be fair if I didn't give you the chance to tell a little bit of your life story, like I do 97% of my other guests, with rare exceptions. So, what exactly happened to you to cause you to do the things that you do? And I guess give out your contact info and your show, your radio show, and your website and everything else at the beginning of this rather than at the end. So let's do that and tell us who you are for those that haven't heard about you and what you did and what you experienced.
Let's see. I embarked on this journey, I think, more seriously after a divorce many years ago. It just a questioning as to, what was this life and what is it that I had gone through. But I must say that I came into this life questioning anyway, in a very edgy way. But anyway, I think I started to ask more profound questions after getting out of that marriage, that relationship with two children, and just needing to understand. And so on my own, I diligently started to find a way to tap into a greater part of myself and also to pierce the veil, I guess, to some degree. I started out with, I read a couple of books, Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine, and then I read Masters of the Far East, and I think Dancing in the Light as well, which is Shirley MacLaine. Anyway, I just decided to put them away, and I did kind of go through the Bible again. I must admit that I did. I wanted to see if there's anything that was missed, and I decided that I was just going to put everything away and just aim to just tap into this, whatever this is, without any books. And I didn't know about any workshops and all of that. I didn't have that background, that metaphysical background, coming from the church, even though I hadn't been in the church per se in a long time, but I grew up in the church. And so that was kind of basically what happened, and I was diligent at it, and over time, I'm cutting through a whole lot, but over time, not knowing how to meditate, first of all, and having to sit and try to do this thing that I'm not sure even what I was trying to do. And ultimately, one day, I had this breakthrough experience, with the breath and movement, just energy moving through my body, and I started to just follow that experience time and time again, as I realized it was opening me up to something else that was beyond this third dimensional life that we were so accustomed to living and seeing. And so that's kind of where it started, and I didn't set out to write a book in the very beginning. This was just all about me and my tapping into and breaking through and my discoveries. And I would write a lot of information that I was getting, and at some point, years later, I have to say years later, it was when I started to sit down and think, oh, you know what, this could be a book. And, one by one, each chapter just sort of got formed by itself from information that I had written, and one thing led to another, and I would just sort of feel directed to maybe information that would support what I was writing, and not knowing anything about quantum physics or any of that at the time either. And so years later, we're talking from 1992 when I really started this journey, and then in 2000, the end of 2007 is when I launched the book, wrote the book, The Holographic Canvas, The Fusing of Mind and Matter. And so that's how we arrived at that point. So I hope that, I'm not sure if that's enough information. I didn't want
No,
to
that's good. That's
use
good.
up
That's
a
good.
lot of time.
It sets the stage for this, and I guess we'll start off with what appears to be something that's covered in the most popular video on your channel. It's only 2 minutes 30 seconds long, and the video is called "The Business of Disease." I presume this is some sort of a trailer or a little advertisement for a 74-minute documentary, which is how long the real Business of Disease documentary is. It says so on your site, talking about the hypnosis of marketing belief system and the body's ability to heal. Well, that's in a nutshell, but I'm not going to take away your talking time. It's funny how you emphasize that disease is made up of dis, and then you put a hyphen and then ease to show that it means not, your body does not feel comfortable, I guess. But most people associate disease with germs, but of course that's kind of the not proper way of looking at it. There's many more diseases other than germ-induced diseases, cancer and whatnot, and how in the world we can cure it without using the garbage that they're doing, which causes more harm than good with these things. So I'm babbling long enough, like I do a lot. So here's your chance to sum this documentary up in a nutshell. Please get out some important points that people can learn on this program too.
Well, the film is called The Business of the Disease, and you can find out more at thebusinessofdisease.com. And it's also available on Amazon Prime and some networks like DirecTV, and you can see a lot of where you can find the film, even on YouTube on demand as well, and Vimeo. Just go to thebusinessofdisease.com. But initially, I started out with this film. It's this feature film. I didn't plan on doing a feature film and all of that, but I was sort of triggered by the the Breast Cancer Awareness Month is kind of what triggered it back in 2010. And every time I go in the store, I'd hear, do you want to donate to breast cancer awareness? Sometimes they didn't even say awareness. They just said, you want to donate to breast cancer. And so I thought, I didn't even realize it was October. I didn't realize it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I just didn't. I just know that I just got tired of every time I'd go in the store, somebody was asking me if I wanted to donate to this thing. And so, out of that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to write an article about this. So there's an article on my website, therealsoniabarrett.com, that is titled The Marketing of Breast Cancer, the Pink Ribbon Agenda. And this is really how this film started. It's a very long article. It has a lot of information in there if anybody wants to really check it out, and responses from other people who have even had breast cancer who just loved the article, and it kind of took off all over the internet because it talks about so much. But my thing is that I kept wanting to understand. I thought, with this pink ribbon, because symbols are basically our first language, how was our brain reacting and responding, and our minds responding to this pink ribbon? And that was like a big question for me, because I realized that every time I saw basically the color pink, it's almost immediately my mind sort of reverted to this whole pink ribbon, that breast cancer awareness. So obviously, what does that do for your brain? How are we taking that in? How our brothers and sisters and aunts, uncles, lovers, husband, wives, girlfriend, boyfriend, and children, how is this now being interpreted in our minds as this thing that is now considered like a part of our lives? And so it was really being more reinforced. That's how I was looking at it. It felt like this was really more so being reinforced in our awareness, in our consciousness. And so was there more fear that was coming out of this? Were there more people fearful? And if that were the case, would that also contribute to the rise in more people getting, this illness, this disease? And so those were my questions. And, of course, then it took me into a whole lot of other things. I basically, after I wrote the article, I thought, let me do a short film, interview a couple of people, experts, and see what they have to say. And it kind of went from there, and before I knew it, it was this much bigger project with all of these profound people that show up in the film and really bring up some valid points about what we are, what our bodies are, and how we are responding and reacting, and how emotions, most of all, affect the health of the body, which is something that is minimally explored in allopathic medicine, and what we define as traditional medicine. It's like sort of secondary, yet everybody walks around with stored history, stored pain, stored trauma, a lot of stored anger, stored lots of emotions that may not be expressed, are just hidden, tucked away very deeply. And since the body is electric, everything measures a frequency. Our thoughts, our bodies, our organs resonate to a particular frequency. Everything does. So if your thoughts measure a frequency as well, how is that impacting the natural frequency balance of the body? Those were all questions that really began to take root. And as you can, most people, I shouldn't say most people, but if anybody does any research, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in your audience who are familiar with this idea of the emotions and its impact on the body, you will see that there's so many discoveries. There's so much research. You don't even have to do research. Honestly, you don't even have to. Just think about when you're upset, how you get a knot in your stomach, how it affects your belly, or some people will get a headache when they're upset. You just notice how your body naturally responds to your emotions, to how you feel. Some people are in fearful situations all the time, and it's natural for them to either they get diarrhea, they got to run to the bathroom, lots of different things that are happening in the body that let us know that the body is completely responding to our feelings, how we feel, and what the kind of emotions. So all of that was explored in the film, and along with some sciences for health that have been discovered and explored to give people an opportunity to realize that there is more than just pharmaceuticals, and to understand just how much the body reacts to pharmaceuticals, because the body is a chemical factory. And so because it's a chemical factory and it makes its own potions, it makes its own chemical solutions, its own hormones and all of that, then when we add a substance, which is generally a pharmaceutical drug, to the body recognizes it as something very foreign, and it wants to get rid of it. And so it's all of those things that people really need to understand. And if somebody has to take medication, there's also some protocols that people should understand. When you understand that the body is a chemical factory and that much of what you take in pharmaceutical drugs, the body wants to eliminate it, and even if you feel better, you'll notice a lot of times you'll develop something else, because the body is trying to compensate also for the effects of this foreign substance. So it's constantly trying to fix, it's like plugging a hole in the wall, in a dike, and so the body keeps trying to do that. And so it's really important that I think people really begin to understand more about how the body works and pay attention to their own body, because it has its own unique responses and signals, letting people know that it's either in trouble and it needs your attention, and to add the things to it to support its aim at creating homeostasis, which is creating balance in the body. The body's a system. And those are things that the film was trying to really get across to people, and that we shouldn't wait on the system to fix things for us. We get it about health insurance and so on. We understand all of that. But in the meantime, you're responsible for that vehicle that you are in. You are solely responsible for it, and you can't completely put your trust in a doctor or anybody, because truthfully, nobody really knows your body like you do. We're just not, we haven't been taught that. We've been more so taught to look outside at everyone else or in everything else for to know more, about what we need. So whether it be government, whether it be religion, whether it be school, someone else knows more of what you need, what's best for you, but you don't. And this has been the programming. And so you find that's why most people have such a difficult time trusting themselves with their bodies. And I think those are very, very important facts that, were presented in the film, and not telling people not to go to the doctor. So I want to say that as well. You can use that establishment to probably understand, what's going on in my body, what are the symptoms, or what do they represent, maybe, and then you also turn around and do your own research as well as to what else is there that could probably bring more balance to my body. Also, how am I living? What's my lifestyle? What's my mental state? Am I happy? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I, do I like my job? Am I stressed out from my job? Am I feeling great about being in this relationship? Am I stressed? Am I tired? Well, it's that honest look at your life and yourself. No judgment, no blame. Just an honest look. It is the best way that we can begin to heal and fix our lives, our bodies, is by being honest with ourselves. And I'll stop there.
Well, I'm glad there's people like you that do that. And you try to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, and some theoretical physicist named Dr. Amit Goswami says you're a true mystic. I'm reading off your site, by the way, here. Also known for your cutting-edge insights, much of it's supported by quantum physics. Okay, this is a subject worth talking about, and I want to try to kill a couple birds with one stone here by one of your books, The Holographic Canvas, The Fusing of Mind and Matter. Great title. Of course, mind over matter does exist. The placebo effect does prove that, and those that try to say no, the placebo effect doesn't prove mind over matter exists, acknowledge that it does, but they try to downplay it with some explanation that's kind of Chewbacca defense-like, if you get my drift. Of course, the placebo effect is the proof of that, and the extent to which we have the ability to use mind over matter, it seems to vary from person to person. I mean, Luke Skywalker made it very clear to Yoda, moving a ship out of the water and moving rocks around is totally different. Yoda asserted him, it's not, it's only different in your mind. Well, I mean, one could make the argument that, okay, maybe there's a little more mass, so, wouldn't it make sense that because there's more mass in the ship, it would require maybe a little more effort for people to move it than it would rocks? I mean, that makes us want to understand what mass is, and I want to get your take on this too when I ask you to give your whole general take on quantum physics. But thing about mass is they claim they found the God particle, the Higgs boson particle, and Peter Higgs, the guy that claimed that he discovered that with the math anyway, says the math shows it has to exist. If someone said, I've proven the Higgs does exist, I would instantly say, well, I refuse to believe you because the math shows it has to exist. So, and they claim that they found it, but nobody can come up with a good analogy for how the Higgs works, the best being like two people going across a hallway. The paparazzi camera people hassle one of the people, and those paparazzis can be thought of as the Higgs particle, making the things slow down because it has more mass that's getting the paparazzi cameras, while the other person that's not by the paparazzi can keep going through the hallway. It's kind of a bad analogy, but it's the best they can come up with. So quantum physics, if you believe it supports your work, and that's also debatable because some say quantum physics, that's 3D. Don't want to focus a little too much on it because, it's interesting, but it keeps you stuck in 3D level because it's the physics of how 3D works. Do you agree or disagree with that? And what is it about quantum physics and mass that you feel is worth knowing to help you understand reality better?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I don't lock myself into I don't lock science in. I don't lock it in. I don't even lock it into our understanding of science here at this time, because I think what we understand on the human level is always barely scratching the surface, because we are able to understand as much as we can stretch our perception and our minds. So I don't limit anything to any exact, precise science that we know of at this time. However, with quantum physics, what I liked about quantum physics in particular, I'm not getting into like a whole bunch of mathematics and so on, but what I liked about quantum physics is the idea of the observer effect. I think when all is said and done, that becomes a really core realization as to how we are actually affecting reality, or affecting the world around us, or affecting what we perceive as reality based on where, or one, our perception is. Our perception has everything to do with, what we actually will see and understand in terms of quantum physics, what reality is presented to us, how reality presents itself to us. One thing we have to understand too is that the brain sort of basically has access to all different levels of possibilities and realities and so on. But the brain filters reality according to what we can accept as a possibility. I think I think that has become very clear even in science, in terms of what they're explaining and understanding, is that much of what we are able to see is simply because those are things that we to some degree have accepted as a possibility. So much of what is there, pretty much all of what is there, we do not see because of these lots of skepticism and lots of being programmed for a specific version of reality, or some specifics and some limitations about what we think reality can be. And I think that plays a huge role, because human beings like to be comfortable. They like to have an understanding that is comfortable, that they can say, yes, well, things are, 2 plus 2 is 4, and that's it. So we get people doing, debate. Some people will want to debate about it. Well, no, that can't be. Well, how do you know that? What if the reality you understand is simply locked into your limited perception? You're not allowing reality to show you more of what it actually is. What if all you can see and experience is completely based on the limitation, the boundaries that you've put around the possibilities? So then you have those that say, well, all that exists are possibilities. Science even says it, it's an ocean of potential. Well, if that's the case, then that would say that pretty much anything is a possibility. You might not see it, you might not experience it right now in your reality, in your perception of reality, but it doesn't mean that all of these things are not possible. And so this is where we are right now, I think, in human sort of evolution, which is why we're seeing so much more about technology and all the things that are unfolding with, with what human beings are doing, stepping it up in that area of technology, is really simply because, in general, human consciousness, human awareness, humans are in more of a space of a bit more of expansion. And when I say that, I don't mean that everybody is in the same state of awareness. I don't mean that. I don't mean this where they do this sort of Borg type, everybody has to wake up at the same time. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that this is a time, it is evident that this is a time where there's an opportunity for human beings to start to push the envelope even more, so that they can begin to see more and understand more and realize that there really aren't even any, there's no limitations to science. What we have are for us, some concrete ideas that we have about how reality operates and functions, including even our laws here in our environment, our gaseous laws and stuff where about oxygen and nitrogen and all of these gases that we know is part of our environment. But it doesn't mean that it stops there. So for me, that is something that I really emphasize is for people to get over themselves and to realize that this thing we call creation or reality is way bigger than the box that you try to put it in. And what we know right now does not mean that that is ever the final truth. And that is people's comfort zone. They want final conclusions about what it is. Well, we understand this about subatomic particles, and that's the end. No. That's all just limited to where we are in our growth, in our evolution, and that's why in 50 years, even in 10 years, and even 100 years, we're constantly seeing scientists come back and they go, oh, we're just discovering. Oh, we just discovered this. Because it's endless. To me, that is a crucial part to this realization. And it's not about the fight of what's right, who's right. No, you can't put it in a box. What we know at this point is what we know. And the more we open ourselves as individuals, because you don't have to wait on scientists to tell you. Everybody's hook is connected to something much bigger, to this bigger internet, so to speak. If you are open, if you say to yourself, I realize that there really is no bottom line to this. There's no limitation to this. And I really want to see more of what is possible and what is there instead of going, oh, that's not possible. They haven't proven that yet. That is all becomes, in my mind, it becomes so ridiculous, but at the same time essential, because the person who thinks in those terms of limitation, then that is where they are, and that works for them. But how can we even try to put a cap on what this is when we see every how many years science is coming back and either changing their mind on something or discovering, was it always there? Sure. Whatever they discovered tomorrow or next week, it didn't just show up. It was always there. But we weren't ready to see it. And I think those, for me, are important facts or factors. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it did.
I'm going to say it did, and there's a lot more I could elaborate on, but we have other things to discuss here, and other books that you've written that are worth talking about. A Journey of Possibilities, your second book. I'm going to change the word for a moment here and ask you to give your take on this afterwards, but let's say you called it a journey of probabilities. Now, this is another area, just like quantum physics. They say, well, it's interesting, but it kind of keeps you stuck in 3D. This is science behind how 3D is. Well, probability and possibilities, to think that there's a probability and a possibility is kind of keeping you stuck in a 3D level, because once you move past 3D, then the math that is the language of the universe does not need to apply. Therefore, the such laws of probability don't need to apply. And that raises the question, well, what do we have to do to violate the laws of probability to get the reality that we truly want to create via law of attraction, law of reflection? Well, here's an interesting example of how a very interesting thing about how people can not at will affect the laws of probability, but still do something that can cause it to happen. Back in the day when I was reading interesting stories about people's tales of getting high on some psychoactive substance. An interesting trend was people that got high on dextromethorphan, the overactive ingredient cough syrup, had this interesting phenomenon happen to them where when they were high, and this was usually when they took very high doses that they said were good for shamanic work and whatnot, they were able to indirectly affect the laws of probability so that by being high on the substance, it increased the chance of some strange unusual thing happening that they witnessed, which is one of those things where you'd say, oh, well, you don't see that every day. That's a very rare thing. And somehow, some way, the getting high on the stuff put them in a disassociative state, which allowed that to happen, that not you see every day kind of thing. Well, the thing is, though, it's not something that they can control when they get high on the substance easily. It just comes up at random, and just because they were in a altered state of consciousness, that happened, and it just happened to be the likelihood of some strange thing happening. So what's the probability that something like that would happen? Well, you got to put an asterisk on that statement. If you're high on cough medicine, the probability increases for whatever the reason may be. So now that's a crazy
Well, if the
example.
brain is impacted, I mean, it's, it's a chemical response. I mean, it's, the brain, it's which filters. I'll let you finish, but the brain which filters reality. That's why when people get high, it changes something in the brain, and they are interacting with whatever they're perceiving in that moment as a reality. It doesn't mean that it's not valid. This is the part that I think that's crazy for some people, because we want to make some things like what they're seeing is not real, but this is real over here. Well, we're all actually we're all pretty much like high. This is in a different kind of high, which is why we're experiencing this idea of reality. We are having for lack of a better word, a chemical or hormonal experience at this point. So it makes it all very, very kind of interesting.
Yeah, it does. But from a law of attraction, law of reflection standpoint, we realize our thoughts and our emotions. I believe it's thoughts are electrical energy, electrical masculine dominant, while emotions are feminine energy, magnetic. Magnetic. Electromagnetism, the masculine and feminine forms of the same thing. People have said, and that's where how it involved the thoughts creating reality in this electric universe, and I do emphasize electric universe. So that makes us wonder, well, how can we use our thoughts and our emotions? How do we get our thoughts in the right amount and the right state of thought and the right vibrational emotion that it has to be for the thought's emotion, the result of the thought, to get the reality we want? I understand there's so many variables here, but people want to know if everything is possible because of infinite consciousness. I need to find ways to become a superhuman, knowing that it is possible, but I'm just lacking something that certain superhumans have, whatever it may be. So how do you affect your state, thoughts, and emotions to get this? What do you want?
I think the first thing is that, which is probably what, I don't know, people don't want to hear that part because we want step 1 or step 2 or step 3. The first thing is to realize is that we already are doing that. The question, the thing is, what is it that you're actually attracting, and what is the truth of what you're thinking and believing? This is the bottom line of it. There is nothing that we're doing all of these things that we want to do. It's just the state of awareness that we're in. So people are living the lives that they really are have pulled to themselves because of some, buried information, data. There's things that are there. There's so much information in us, layers deep, and so we are creating our lives based on a lot of. Okay, I'll give you one of the examples that I use in workshops, and I've done this, point this out with people. But I've had people say, well, no matter what I do, there's one person in particular, I always remember this person, but he says, I've done everything. I've taken this class, that class, Reiki, my finances are, things just don't seem to shift. No matter what I do, everything just stays the same. No matter what, doesn't matter what I do. And I said to him then, I said, okay, did you hear all of what you said? You always say that, right? Yeah. I go, because that is a law that you have created in your space. Because people do that. They don't see that. It sounds so simple, but when you're, what? This always happens to me. No matter what, it always happens to me. Or why is it that everybody treats me that way or talks to me that way or whatever? There's a lot of that kind of thing that we do, and we don't realize that, yes, everything creates some sort of law for us in our reality, because your brain it looks for patterns. It looks for similar things. It looks for patterns. Not only that, but it has a blueprint of what reality looks like for you, the reality that you personally are living by. There is a blueprint, and it just refers to that blueprint all the time because we are always reinforcing that blueprint of what reality looks like. So everything is just adhering to what it is that we are claiming ourselves to be and our lives to be and so on. And this is kind of tough for some people to want to understand it or to accept that. But you are working your magic all the time. It's just like a wizard or a witch waving the wand all the time, not realizing that you're just waving your magic wand, creating the things that you think that you don't want. And a lot of times the things that we think that we do want, and I will say we think that we do want or we think that we would like to have, we don't believe that we can have it anyway. The belief system is so truly wrapped into almost like the impossibility of it happening without that person realizing that they don't really believe that they can have it anyway. So then it doesn't happen. So what happens? The brain just refers back to the same blueprint that's there. People win the lottery many times. People win the lottery, or large sums of money, end up either going through it, they end up right back to no money. Why is that? Because they don't have a reference point for having that kind of cash flow. So they just revert back to their normal program, what their normal has been. So the question one has to ask yourself, and this is why I say this requires complete honesty, is what is my story? What does my blueprint really look like? What do I believe about my life? You know, what all of those things you have to stop and you have to just own it. No blame, no guilt, just seeing the truth so that you can go, that's what I'm doing. Okay. And I believe this about myself. Why do I believe that about myself? You have to kind of dig through it. It's like you're asking these 20 questions of yourself. Sometimes you ask till you end up with nothing. You end up nowhere. And a lot of times when you do and you have no more answers, you realize that the belief you had about yourself is really supported by nothing. It's really not supported by anything. Okay, I'm ready to let that go. I'm really ready to release that thought, that belief system or that thought. The other thing is that we identify ourselves completely with the character that we play. We don't know how to make that distinction, or we think we do, but then we do something completely different. So the character of Sonia or the character of Andrew, we often don't think of it that way because we have made the totality of who we are Andrew or Sonia. Yet you've got two things happening here. You've got the character, the role that Sonia plays as the identity of Sonia, but that is not the totality of who I am. Who I am cannot be measured or contained. So there is this much more expansive aspect of myself. That is, it's so very important for people to really understand that they're dealing with two different aspects. You've got the automated self, you've got the character that you identify with. I am this, I am Sonia, and I am whatever I say I am, and they're all tied up in that character. Makes it very difficult to step back and to see more clearly with the script that you've written for this character that you identify yourself with, that I've called Sonia, I've called Andrew, or you call yourself Andrew. All the identities that have been accumulated from the time of your birth, or probably even from in the womb, of either socially and even your family, and everything around you has helped to shape the character that you have come to believe to be you, the totality of who you are. Those are very important components. And so it's never just a matter of, okay, well, I'm just going to jump and I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to be positive. This is why a lot of times for people it doesn't always work because they don't believe any of what they're saying. They're trying to be positive, and then it doesn't work because that you don't believe what you have just said. Now the person has to stop and look at that. What do I really think of myself? So that's why it goes back to that, the character. When somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" That's our thing. We love to categorize people and identify them by what their identity is. What's your character? What does your character do? Oh, well, I'm a doctor. Oh, well, I'm a writer, and all the things that come with that. That's that identity package. That's the character, and we get lost in that. Oh, I'm spiritual. That's also can be part of this character identity that has been created, and it really takes you away from being able to see more of who you are, or really be introduced to the bigger aspect, the more expansive aspect of yourself. So there's all of these factors at play, which, I just threw out a few things, but this is what we do with the workshops and so on that I do. And, these are people who are really in that space of they are okay with being honest with themselves. They want to see this. I'm not telling them I'm not telling them what I think they are. You are the one that's going ahead and seeing for yourself what you think you've been, and then you step back and go, okay. There's always that moment of stepping back and going, okay, I see what's happening here. And there's laughter. There is humor. I am strong on that. It's like when we learn to laugh at ourselves, particularly when we discover things about ourselves, and we're able to really laugh at the fact that we have really thought ourselves the character this whole time, and you start laughing more at the things that we do, because you're not taking it in and just making it who you are. That starts to neutralize or break things down. It takes away you crystallizing all of these things in your life. You start to laugh, and the laughter starts to actually help to change some of these programs and some of these beliefs, because you have to take it so seriously in order to really stabilize those particles, to make it really the focus and solidify it, so that that's the reality standing before you all the time.
Well, thank you for trying to make sense of all that. And, one thing that people need to also learn how to make sense of, a lot of controversy regarding, like, where's the line with this? I'm asking about this, judging by the title, one of the conferences, the many conferences you've been to. One of them, I don't know if I've ever heard of this, which is strange, a Conspiracy Con. I'd like you to tell me if that's annual and what that's all about and where it's held. But the thing I'm pointing out here, specifically conspiracy, when do you draw the line between moving past that? A lot of people in the spiritual but not religious community don't really like talking about conspiracies, claiming it gets them uncomfortable, which I find kind of shocking, because you would think that by being so spiritual, they'd learn how to not get uncomfortable. They discipline themselves not to do that.
It's avoidance.
What did you say?
It's avoidance.
Can you explain the phenomenon? Because I would expect these people to be able to not learn how to discipline themselves not to get uncomfortable, considering that they moved past conspiracies. Okay, they learned to move past something that gets a lot of sheeple uncomfortable. So why would they get uncomfortable when they became spiritually awake and hearing about something that they think is not worth talking about anymore? I'm kind of confused.
Well, some of it, like I said, is avoidance. Sometimes for some people, if they don't hear it, then it's not relevant. If they don't listen to it, it's not relevant. Or they just don't want to. They just feel that maybe, yes, they are above some of these things that are being said, and they'd rather focus on all of the positive things. And sometimes it's, that's basically what I've seen. Now, let me say this. Conspiracy Con actually was one of the oldest conferences. It was around for about 15 years, and it was the conference at the time. And I think the last one was in 2014. He went through some real financial demise with some some things that happened. To my understanding, something someone did. But anyway, it was a very well respected conference some time back. And so yes, I was brought in not for the conspiracy aspect, but really more to bring a balance to it, because there are people that do show up at these conferences and all they want to hear is the conspiracy. It's kind of like getting somebody that likes a roller coaster ride. We love scary movies and we love roller coaster rides. Some people don't really want a solution. They just like to hear all of that stuff and they don't really want any solutions. I've seen that. They don't really want that. They just want to hear all of this and then either be able to go back and regurgitate it, but they're not really looking for any kind of real deep, spiritual expansion. Now, the people who say that they're so super spiritual and they don't want to hear about it either, that's, again, some of it is just avoidance. And then there are people where they've had enough of it, and it depends on what the conspiracy is. What I also found, too, Andrew, is that having gone to, in the past, I stayed away from conferences for a while, for a few years, but having gone to some of these conferences, what I find interesting is, yes, a lot of the people who are speaking about conspiracies, and a lot of times, I wish there was a different word for it, because there's a lot of truth to a lot of what is said, things that are actually going on. But these people are in ill health. And that always just puzzled me. It's like, okay, but you're talking about this and you're passionate about it, but what about you taking care of your health? What is the point then of doing all of that if your health is constantly in decline? You're not doing what you need to do. It's almost like the body becomes unimportant. Well, the reason why we're here at the conference and everybody's doing all of this is because they're all in a body. What you're talking about affects everybody that's in a body. So if you're not in a body, then you have no impact on the game, in the human game and the experience. So that, to me, always gets a little bit interesting, because you need your health. If you're going to carry on the good fight, however you want to term it, and be an activist or whatever, you need your health. But that's the only thing I can say to you in terms of those people who have a challenge with it, that they just don't want to hear it. It's just easier to not hear it. Especially, I think sometimes too, with no solutions. Are there solutions, or are you just selling fear? So let me say that. Let me throw that in. There are some people, I have to say, that are just throwing fear. They just tell people about all the stuff that's going on with them, all the bad things, and there's no real solution, but it sells. Fear sells. So that's the other part of it. If you check my website going way back, and people know me from way back from covering many of these things, between Jordan Maxwell and Michael Tsarian and so many people. And I used to have a magazine called Sovereign Mind Magazine. So I understand that. I dug into a lot of this information. I think there's a lot of good, truthful information in there that can assist one also on the spiritual path. Do you need to hang out there and stay there? No. Everything is a stepping stone. Everything in your life is a stepping stone to taking you to greater levels of awareness.
There's no question that there are many stepping stones to get to the ultimate level, and how many stepping stones you have to take. There's a lot of variables there, but what a couple questions I want to ask you, going out into left field here, sort of from this anyway. About quantum physics, a lot of work revolves around it. One question I want to ask you, because this is very big about the nature of reality and how it works. Do you accept or reject the Schrodinger's cat phenomenon? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's all interesting. The cat dead or alive in the box. I mean, you open it is based on what is my thinking? Am I expecting to find a cat alive in a box, or am I expecting to find a cat dead in the box? I mean, it's all there. I don't know that anybody can give any finality on, oh, well, that makes no sense. Your whole life is Schrodinger's cat. You're living your whole life is this experience. Door number one or door number two. Oh, well, guess what? I'm talking to you now. Somebody is whoever your audience is, they're listening. Before they got on the show, listen to your show, they may have had a conclusion about something, an understanding about something. All right, so now they've listened, and for some reason, their understanding has shifted. So what does that mean? It means that the choices that they will now make for certain things will be different as opposed to if their understanding had not shifted. It's all the same thing. No, who knows? Is door number one, door number two, or door number three? That's basically what we're saying with the whole Schrodinger's cat concept. It's we want some conclusions about everything, but there really aren't per se, other than the realization that, you know what, this thing is constantly changing, and every thought I have is like a portal, and it takes me on a journey. Wow. Awareness, the more knowledge I have, the more my choices may change, because I have more knowledge about something. My awareness is expanding. My consciousness is expanding because I have more information here. So information is definitely key in the sense of one's perception. One's perception is going to be limited by the information that you have, by the understanding that you have, by the awareness that you have. Your perception is going to be, one's perception is going to be limited based on that. So whatever the perception is, it changes, it determines what door we will always open in our lives. It determines that.
Yeah, but, well, to make my question a little more specific, what I'm trying to say is the old question that Einstein was once asked by someone, can we be sure the moon is there if nobody is looking at it, or if nobody hears a tree fall in the forest, can we be sure that a tree fell in the forest? Well, according to Andrew Basiago, who the time travel guy, he claimed, and when I interviewed him, he rejects Schrodinger's cat on the grounds that the universe does exist in a certain way. Whether or not you're observing it is totally beside the point, and you can only get involved in a timeline and interact with it, and you can't change the timeline. You just interact with it, and it exists as it does regardless of whether or not you're observing it. Agree or disagree?
Oh, well, I think, once again, everything, you mentioned before, a field of what? Potentials. Everything is there. Everything is a potential and a possibility. What he is saying is the universe is there, and it's based on our interacting with it. Sure, everything is there. But if you are not in a state of, say, awareness, like the building that goes up, and it's been probably going up, we didn't notice it, then all of a sudden one day you're like, when did they put that building up? It's kind of the same thing. Interacting with the universe, yes, we are in a state of a design as human beings, and we are interacting with it to the best of our ability or best of our awareness at this point. Our interaction with it is obviously not final in the sense of how we're interacting with it. So there's always a much bigger picture. So, yeah, if he says that's what he says, then yes, that's a truth too. That is a truth too. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't.
Okay, thank you.
I don't try to throw things out, because you are seeing, again, what do they say in quantum physics? They are confirming that even the scientist affects the outcome of the experiment by their perception. So,
yes, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So, okay, fair enough. But moving on to another area that's Okay, Bay Area UFO conference. That's another one that said you've been to. Now, this UFO thing, this is it really worth obsessing and researching about? And if it is, then well, what part can we move from? Because mentioned about there's many stepping stones that you have to jump on earlier. Well, one area of the UFOs when it comes to stepping stones is like when are you going to move past the idea that the UFOs and flying saucers and whatnot are powered by mercury or some sort of anti-gravity technology or a very high proton containing element like element 115 if you believe Bob Lazar. And when are you going to believe that versus when are you going to say, okay, we don't really need to focus on this anymore because craft can be and most likely are being powered by consciousness. The extraterrestrials are doing nothing more than exploiting the fact that space and time are actually illusions, and they've elevated their consciousness to a level where they don't need element 115, they don't need anti-gravity, and they don't need to use time dilation to move really fast to bend and warp, to travel into the future faster. No, they don't have to do that. It's all in the consciousness. So there are people out there, and I interviewed this one guy, Jeremy Riss, who he seems like a very bright guy and seems like he believes what he's saying, but some are asserting that based on the comments I read about him, he's definitely some sort of a shill who's trying to keep us stuck at a certain stepping stone of awakening by trying to downplay the idea that all craft is consciousness powered, and instead he's focusing just on the 3D stuff, the anti-gravity and the mercury and whatnot, and he's really trying to stick with that. And some say, well, he's probably a shill who realizes, okay, we can't dumb him down at the extreme level, but at least we can keep him stuck at a stepping stone of awakening, in this case, the UFO technology. So when it comes to this area, do you have any comments on when can you move past the type of technology that's 3D based versus all consciousness based?
It, and I think again, when I've gone to these conferences, that's not my conversation. I'm not there when I'm talking about like what you're saying. I'm always there to give an understanding, to assist people to move beyond these limiting perceptions or perspectives that they have. Yes, I do agree that it's the level of technology that they're dealing with. Is not on the minuscule level that people are talking about. The body is a technology, consciousness, all of that is just, how we interpret the idea of technology. But I think that the individual has to come into, it's, a realization of, wait a second, there has to be more, or realize that this is limiting. So what people like you can do is, which is what you're doing, is put out that information, and the people who are ready, I strongly believe that you can't make anybody do anything unless there's a calling in them. As I've seen with many people where they go, you know what, I wasn't feeling that anymore, and I just moved away from it. That's the only thing you can do is provide the information, and those people who are listening and who are ready to see the bigger picture, they step it up and they see the bigger picture. Yes, much of the UFO movement, the people who tend to follow it, I shouldn't say much because I don't have a count, but it just seemed like there's quite a few people that are attached to, you're right, the more 3D perspectives about what's out there. Life, and I say there's life everywhere. It might not be in the form that you think it is. Life may, exist as pure sound or light or whatever the case may be. There's so much going on there. But there are people who are more comfortable with that. They attach to it. They're sort of hooked on it. They're sort of addicted to hearing about it that way, because if you are constantly just taking this in from a 3D perspective, what does that say about you? You then don't have to shift yourself. When you start thinking more profoundly about what the possibility is of their consciousness and how they're actually moving through time or no time, that means you would have to have shifted your understanding and awareness and consciousness enough to begin to embrace such concepts. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do indeed see what you are saying, but then again, I don't see what you're saying because I can't really expand my consciousness to certain levels because I'm kind of still stuck to this level like the rest of
But
humanity is.
you know what I'm saying. What I'm
Yeah,
saying, extend your consciousness. I'm just talking about your awareness. You were able to mention these things, and you were asking me how can people then begin to shift, out of the 3D perception of alien life and alien technology, right? That's what you had asked, right?
yeah, I guess that is what I asked. Makes for good
Okay,
conversation, so it's worth
so then
talking about.
you apparently have an awareness that it's more than just the 3D perspective of alien technology the way it's seen. Is that correct? I want to make sure that.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's
Okay,
definitely
then
correct.
that means that for you to even think that way, your awareness is more than probably the average person who is really tied to the 3D concepts about alien and alien technology. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that your consciousness has just reached, heights where you're traveling, through time without your body. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying when I'm saying consciousness, I'm saying your awareness has shifted at least enough to where you are in acknowledgement and realization that you're not, we don't need to be stuck there anymore, that we can see the bigger picture. When will people see the bigger picture? That's what you were saying. So that's what I was trying to explain. In order for people to even see the bigger picture, their awareness have to be shifted and expanded enough to be able to see. But if their awareness is so dumbed down, and they're not really at this point willing to push the envelope and stretch their understanding or stretch any kind of awareness, there's nothing anybody can do until that person decides to be more curious beyond all of these 3D perceptions.
Fair enough. So that being said, it's been about an hour, so I'll give you the chance now, the last few minutes, get out anything you like. Actually, I don't remember. Did you get out your contact info and your sites at the beginning after giving you a chance to your life story? I don't know if you did, but if you did, get out again by
I
all means.
mentioned it, but I'll give it out again. It's therealsoniabarrett.com is my main website, therealsoniabarrett.com, and my radio show is on KPFK 90.7 called The Expansion Zone. It's Los Angeles, but online you can get it at kpfk.org. But it's The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett. And the documentary website is The Business of Disease, thebusinessofdisease.com. And you can just Google me if you forget, and I'm kind of easy to find, YouTube and so on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Learned a few things myself on this interview. So thank you very much for giving your input, your knowledge, your expertise, and everything else that goes with it. So loved having you on. Great show. I'll get this uploaded to YouTube as soon as possible, hopefully no later than midnight tomorrow. Good luck. Maybe I'll see you at a future conference, Sonia. Take care.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.